Committee will come to order. Today, the committee will hear testimony from the three service secretaries on the administration's fiscal year 2019 budget request, as well as on their progress in implementing the acquisition reforms already passed into law. The two are closely tied because both branches of government have a responsibility to get more defense value for the taxpayers from the money that's spent, as well as a responsibility to get innovation into the hands of the warfighter faster. Acquisition reform has put more authority and more responsibility with the services. We have begun to reverse the decline in funding. Now DoD and the services have to deliver results. The budget agreement, which Congress must complete by passing the appropriations bill this week, begins to repair and rebuild the military. But our adversaries are not waiting around for us to catch up. We must reform as we rebuild. We must be prepared across the full spectrum of modern warfare, from nuclear deterrence to the kind of political and information campaigns we'll discuss at greater length in our hearing tomorrow. And we must measure success by output and results rather than inputs and process. The budget agreement gives us an opportunity, but the legislative and executive must work together to make the most of it. Business as usual will not adequately defend the nation in today's world. I know I speak for all my colleagues on this committee in saying that we stand ready to do our part to get us on the right track. Yield to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the secretaries being here, and I agree completely with the Chairman's opening remarks. I think he perfectly outlines the challenge. There is the tiny little hurdle of actually passing those appropriations bills, which seems to always be like we're just around the corner from doing it. That's been going on now for 14 months, and it's still going on even as we're 3 days away from when it has to be done. But let's assume for the moment we get that done, then there is a reasonable amount of money available to the Pentagon for 2018 and 2019. And this is an enormously important opportunity for two reasons. Number one, because it is three actually. There is a lot of money there. So we have to make sure that we spend it wisely, as the Chairman said. Number two, we face an incredibly complex threat environment. So we're going to want to do like 5 million things at once, and prioritizing is going to be enormously important. And number three, that money is very quickly going to be gone, because when you look at our fiscal situation as we push towards $22 trillion in debt, we have, I think the guess is it's going to be about $1 trillion deficit this year. And of course, the Budget Control Act does have 2 more years, 2020 and 2021, to come back into place. You never know, but the odds are this is the largest the defense budget's going to be for probably about the next decade. So we have to make sure that we spend this money wisely, and we also spend in a way that doesn't lock us into sort of long-term obligations that can't be met given the fiscal restraints that are coming. But I think the most exciting and most promising aspect of this is I've met and worked with all three of you, and also the Secretary of Defense, the Deputy Secretary, and the Acquisitions Undersecretary, and I think we have a great team together that is really focused on efficiency and is really focused on getting the most out of the money we spend and trying to make the mother of all bureaucracies, which is the Pentagon, work. Just had a good conversation with Secretary Spencer about this. I think we're headed in the right direction. I'll just close by saying, as we head into the 2018 NDAA, if there's anything that we can do or not do in the NDAA to help you with that acquisition reform process, please let us know, because I think that's what's going to be most important, is to make sure that we spend the money as wisely as is humanly possible to meet all the challenges that we do face. With that, I yield back and look forward to the testimony.
Committee is pleased to welcome the Honorable Mark Esper, Secretary of the Army, the Honorable Richard Spencer, Secretary of the Navy, the Honorable Heather Wilson, Secretary of the Air Force, as witnesses today. Without objection, your full written statements will all be made part of the record, and we will be interested in hearing any oral comments you'd like to make at this time. Secretary Esper, we'll start with you.
Chairman Thornberry, Ranking Member Smith, distinguished members of the committee, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. Let me say up front that the Army's readiness across its formations is improving, and if called upon today, I am confident we would prevail in any conflict. This is due in part to the increased funding Congress provided last year. For this, I would like to say thank you. The Army's mission to defend the nation has not changed, but the strategic environment has. Following 17 years of sustained combat, we now face a future characterized by the reemergence of great power competition and the continued challenges posed by rogue states and non-state actors, making the world ever more complex and dangerous. To address these challenges, the Army is changing. We have a comprehensive plan to ensure our long-term dominance, but we must have predictable, adequate, sustained, and timely funding. Fiscal uncertainty has done a great deal to erode our readiness and hamper our ability to modernize. While the Army must be ready to deploy, fight, and win anytime, anywhere, against any adversary, the National Defense Strategy has identified China and Russia as the principal competitors against which we must build sufficient capacity and capabilities. Both countries are taking a more aggressive role on the world stage and either possess or are building advanced capabilities that are specifically designed to reverse the tactical overmatch we have enjoyed for decades. In support of the NDS, the Army is increasing our lethality along three focused priorities: readiness, modernization, and reform. Readiness is the top priority because only a ready total Army, regular Army, Guard, and Reserve, can deter conflict, defeat enemies, and enable the joint force to win decisively. We are refocusing training for our soldiers to be more lethal and more resilient on the high-intensity battlefield of the future. We are increasing home station training, getting more repetitions for our formations at the company level and below. We are giving training time back to commanders by reducing certain self-imposed mandatory training requirements not tied to increased lethality and by eliminating excessive reporting. We have maximized the number of combat training center rotations to 20 per year, 4 of which are dedicated to the reserve component. These rotations are focused on the high-end fight, replicating near-peer competitor capabilities, including increased enemy lethality, degraded communications, persistent observation, and a contested environment. And while the quality, training, and esprit of our soldiers are what make the U.S. Army the most ready and lethal ground combat force in history, our superiority is enabled by the best weapons and equipment we can provide. As such, my second priority is modernization, or future readiness. To ensure our soldiers never enter a fair fight, the Army is now increasing its investments in modernizing the force. Our modernization strategy is focused on one goal: make soldiers and units far more lethal and effective than any other adversary. The establishment of the Army Futures Command this summer is the best example of our commitment to the future lethality of the force. Army Futures Command will address the key shortcomings of the current acquisition system, providing unity of command, effort, and purpose to the modernization process. The Army has also identified its top 6 modernization priorities for the coming years. Each of these priorities is detailed in my written statement, and each is the purview of a newly established cross-functional team. The purpose of these CFTs is to determine the requirements of needed capabilities to ensure all stakeholders are at the table from day one and to focus Army resources on accelerated experimentation, prototyping, and fielding. In order to ensure battlefield success, our doctrine must be updated to reflect the threat environment we face and remain apace with our other efforts to modernize our equipment. My third priority is reform, freeing up time, money, and manpower to enhance readiness, accelerate modernization, and ensure the efficient use of the resources provided to us by the American people. Our reform efforts, particularly within the acquisition system, are long overdue. While Futures Command is probably the boldest reform we are pursuing, other reform initiatives owe much to the acquisition authorities delegated to the services in prior NDAAs. Within these authorities, we are reinvigorating the Army Requirements Oversight Council, moving major defense acquisition programs back to the service, and using other transactional authorities to accelerate fielding in limited situations. A ready and modernized Army is critical to defend the nation, but we must not overlook what makes us remarkable. For this, I've outlined 3 enduring priorities. First, taking care of our soldiers, civilians, and their families. Second, a service-wide recommitment to the Army's values, especially by leaders, to treat everyone with dignity and respect. And finally, strengthening our alliances and partners by building stronger ties through a number of initiatives. I look forward to discussing these with you as time permits. With that, let me thank you again for this committee's continued support of the Army and specifically the defense authorizations and funding increases requested in the FY18 and 19 budgets. I look forward to your questions and appreciate the opportunity to discuss these important matters with you today. Thank you.
Secretary Spencer.
Chairman Thornberry, Ranking Member Smith, distinguished members, I want to thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and give you the posture of the Department of the Navy. It's an honor to sit here before you with my fellow service secretaries. On behalf of our services, the Navy Marine Corps team, thank you for the effort put forth by Congress in reaching a bipartisan agreement and then support by the authorizing committees. Let me tell you on behalf of the Navy Marine Corps team, we understand that this put people in the farthest edges of their comfort zone, and we are wildly supportive of that, and we thank you for your efforts. We look forward to getting those resources as soon as possible in order to enhance readiness and lethality in our department. These resources will be expended in focused alignment with the National Defense Strategy, building our combat credible force. I echo what Secretary Esper just said about the need for a steady state of resourcing. Today, 94,000 sailors and Marines are forward deployed and stationed using the global maritime commons as a medium for maneuver, ensuring the maritime lanes of commerce remain free and open, assuring access to overseas regions, defending key interests in those areas, protecting United States citizens abroad, preventing adversaries from leveraging the world's oceans against us 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Our budget requests enhance readiness and continue increasing the capability and capacity of the Navy Marine Corps team. As directed in the 2018 National Defense Strategy, our budget submission supports building a more lethal, resilient, and agile force able to deter and defeat aggression by peer competitors and other adversaries in all domains across the conflict spectrum. My priorities for the department center on three categories: people, capabilities, and processes. The ability to accomplish our mission relies on people. 800,000 sailors, Marines, active duty, reserve, our civilian teammates, and all their families. We're building a more lethal and resilient, agile, talented, and rapidly innovating workforce as we speak. The ability to accomplish our mission relies on having capabilities necessary to fight tonight, challenge the competitors, deter our rivals, and win. We are investing in the modernization of key capabilities and new technologies to attain that goal. Lastly, the ability to accomplish our mission relies on having efficient processes in place that will speed the value and the ability to support our warfighters in a more effective and efficient manner. We are creating a continuous improvement mindset in both our culture, management systems, in order to deliver performance with affordability and speed. I deliver to you today a plan for the Department of the Navy with a sense of urgency. We cannot and will not allow our competitive advantage to erode. With your guidance, these planned investments will provide combat-credible maritime forces for the future. We will ensure we're good stewards of providing these resources, drive efficiency across the department to maximize every dollar, and invest smartly to leverage the return on our investments. I look forward to your questions.
Secretary Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Smith, my statement is in the record, and I'd just like to highlight a couple of points that's really part of our budget. The first is that the Air Force budget for fiscal year 19 aligns with the National Defense Strategy. It recognizes that we face a more competitive and dangerous international security environment than we have seen in decades. It also recognizes that great power competition has reemerged as the central challenge to U.S. security. In our budget, there really are two bold moves and one continuing theme. The first bold move is the acceleration of defendable space. We need to be able to deter, defend, and prevail against anyone who seeks to deny our ability to freely operate in space. The President's budget reflects an 18% increase over the fiscal year defense plan for 19, the five-year defense plan, and that is on top of a 6% increase that we presented in the fiscal year 18 defense plan. So accelerate defendable space. The second bold move in this budget is the shift to multi-domain operations. And that's most visible in the changing the way the Air Force plans to do command and control. There is one continuing effort in our budget, and that is to keep improving readiness to win any fight, any time. That's what you expect of your Air Force, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you all. I want to ask each of you to respond to what will be two questions, but I'd invite you to be brief because obviously there's a lot of members who want to have a conversation with you. As Ranking Member pointed out, we're talking about 19, but we have not yet completed all of the work for 18. We have a defense authorization bill signed into law. We have a budget cap agreement signed into law. This week, we need to pass an appropriation bill to match that. I would invite each of you to just briefly describe why this appropriation is significant for your service compared to a CR, compared to a sequestration level, compared to the President's original budget, whatever level you'd want to say. But I think it's important for members to hear from you directly now. Why is this vote this week important? Secretary Esper?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me just say briefly, with regard to modernization, what we call future readiness, as you know, there are restrictions under a CR that limit us from doing two things: new starts and increasing the quantities of munitions, among other things. So those are two immediate impacts that we face right now with regard to materiel and, again, preparing for conflict. More broadly, because of the fact that we're operating under the CR, and we have been now for nearly 6 months, it limits our ability to fund training exercises, to fill seats at our training base, and has an overall impact on the training and readiness of the force.
Secretary Spencer.
Mr. Chairman, I can only echo what Secretary Esper just said and add something on as far as the Navy is concerned. You've heard me speak before what CR has cost the United States Navy since they began, about $4 billion burned in a trash can. But more importantly, we desperately need this new appropriations bill to be set forward. The capital assets and our cycling of maintenance for aviation, surface warfare, undersurface warfare, it is critical, absolutely critical, that we get a continuous form of funding in order to manage the industrial base to put us back on a footing to be out there on the seas protecting that we should do.
Secretary Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, first, with respect to sequester, the sequester in the Budget Control Act is still the law of the land. And I would say that sequester did more damage to the United States Air Force and our ability to defend the nation than anything our adversaries have done in the last 10 years. We did it to ourselves. We cut 30,000 people out of the Air Force, reduced by 10 fighter squadrons, and weapon system sustainment, and the problems that we're having with pilot retention can really be tied directly back to sequester several years ago. With respect to the continuing resolution, we're limited in we can't have any new starts of programs. So a lot of the programs that are going to take us into the future are just still pending, and we will have to execute those in the last 6 months of the year. Particularly with respect to readiness, one of our major readiness issues is munition stockpiles. We want to be able to expand the capacity of our munitions production, and we can't do that until we get this budget through this week. Thank you.
One other brief question. This committee has helped enact significant acquisition reform for the last 3 years. A lot of that puts more responsibility on y'all's shoulders. My question is, based on what you know now, is there any area where we really messed up, where we made a mistake, where we did something that goes the wrong direction and need to be corrected? Obviously, there's going to be tweaks and small challenges, but based on what you've seen and the decisions you've had to make, et cetera, have we gotten anything significant wrong in the last 3 years? Secretary Esper?
Mr. Chairman, no, not that I've encountered yet. In fact, everything that I've had to deal with in the 3+ months that I've been on the job has been positive.
Secretary
Mr. Chairman, I would say the same. There's some fascinating and interesting tools that we're using and we are going to use and look forward to use. So thank you for those. I would ask for a stabilization period so we can digest what we have and have the ability to come back to you if we need more. But right now, the knife drawer looks full.
Secretary Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, there's several things we're taking advantage of. The other transaction authorities, prototyping and experimentation are tremendously valuable, as is the decision by the Congress to push down to lower levels of authority, milestone decision authority. There are a few other things that I would say are strings attached that I think might be worth looking at. There's a provision in there called Provision 807 on costing and fielding estimates that may require it go all the way up to the Secretary of Defense for every major acquisition program. That probably should be put with the milestone decision authority. There's an independent technical readiness assessment that also may have to go back up the chain. All of these, if you push authority down, but you still require some of the sub-decisions to go all the way back up the chain, may not result in the speed that you really want. And then there's another provision, 808, which has to do with an acquisition scorecard, which is a similar kind of issue. So I would say, in general, these are tremendously helpful. We are accelerating our use of them, but there are a few things that we need to make sure the details also get pushed back to the milestone decision authority.
Well, I'd just say we want to work with you in identifying those items, but as I mentioned at the beginning, a major premise of this reform is to give more authority and also more responsibility to the services. That's on y'all's shoulders. And as y'all well know, the world is moving so fast and in many ways is so complex and dangerous that we can't afford to not take full advantage of those tools, but also move out much quicker than we have been. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was joking with staff up here that I think what we all ought to do is the only question we should ask throughout this entire hearing is we should ask Secretary Wilson to tell us what she thinks about the Space Corps, and we should just have a constant conversation about that because I think that'd be interesting. I'll leave that to Mr. Rogers and Mr. Cooper, actually. But the question I do want to ask is where can you save money? Because I've often said that ever since I've been on this committee, 21 years, it has a very easy to track theme, and that is people come over from the Pentagon and tell us all kinds of horror stories about what they don't have, about how short they are, about their unfunded requirements, about all the money that they need that they don't have, and how that lack of money is going to lead to one cataclysm after another. And I don't discount the threat environment that the chairman just described. But if we're going to get to good on that stuff, it can't all be up, 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 up. There's got to be some place in a $700 billion budget where you're going, gosh, I wish I didn't have to spend that money because I'd like to spend it over here. So I realize that the odds of you guys actually answering this question are remote, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway. If you would say, whether it's a program, personnel, whatever, where can you save money in each of your services? Where are we spending money that we shouldn't be spending money?
So, Mr. Smith, I'll go first. I think there are three things that come to mind immediately. First and foremost is acquisition and acquisition reform. So we believe that as we stand up Futures Command and the structure, the processes, the culture that we hope to change alongside that will result in fewer dollars wasted going forward and actually maybe save dollars as well. Number two, we are looking at a number of initiatives to tackle that problem as well. So, for example, the problem of savings, one is contracting services. So we're looking to maybe save $1 billion plus a year for a period of years just by consolidating and rationalizing our contracting services.
Are you sure? I mean, that, as you well know, that's a battle that is very, very difficult. Because
yes, sir, these are all difficult.
Do you have any sort of quick metric for when it makes sense to contract out and when it doesn't?
Well, I'm speaking more directly now to services like that you may find on a garrison or post where maybe you have dozens of contracts all for a small amount of money. Okay. Where you might be able to consolidate those. You can reduce the throughput going through your contracting command to handle those, and you can find some efficiencies there. Okay. You're speaking to a different issue, which I also agree we can find, and that is contractors. So I think to the degree which, and this gets to the third point, to the degree which we can, and I'm looking at this now, right-size our headquarters, rationalize them in terms of their functions, and much like the Congress has done with pushing authorities from DOD down to the services, how much authority, responsibilities can we push down to lower-level commands, and maybe, again, save some manpower and resources that we could push back into other priorities or back into the field to make sure we have our forces are fully fleshed out.
Are there any programs that, tanks, weapon systems, anything like that you think we're forcing on you that probably isn't necessary?
We are looking at the entire range of 800-plus programs we have. I think as part of I know that as part of our reform efforts, we are probably going to look at the lower end of that and assess each for return on investment and probably postpone or cancel some programs.
Okay. Mr. Spencer?
Congressman Smith, I'd start by saying process, which is one of my areas that we're highlighting on. And I can address some of the things we're doing inside the Department of the Navy right now, where we found close to $600 million just in de-obligation. So changing the thought process and changing the attitude on how we actually contract. So when you're through with a contract, your work's not done. If, in fact, there's funds left over, put them back in the bin. Don't send to the Treasury. Small moves like that are now starting to save us some big monies going forward. So focus on process across the way. Acquisition is the other big lever because that's where all the dollars are. If you look at the Navy, we have Ford-class, Virginia Payload, Columbia, H-53. Those are some very sizable programs. Two things that we need to address there. In the long term, we need to keep consistency of people involved with these platforms. They're long-term, long-lead platforms. We need to keep the expertise in place rather than removing people and causing seams in information. More importantly, the acquisition process, once the contract is laid, it certainly isn't on autopilot. It deserves the attention up and down senior management at all times to manage these programs. You'll see it, I think, going forward with Ford. We have a new plan here. You heard we put out the two-ship buy. This was divined from conversations that started back in November with our supplier. And I'd almost like to say it's a new world in that the way we're approaching this. And it's a hands-on, very active management style.
Thank you.
Sir, I'd identify a couple of things. One is the cost of sustainment, which for us is where a lot of the cost is for aircraft. And let me give you a couple of examples. Additive manufacturing as a substitute for very long supply chains, and that'll require some help from you all with respect to intellectual property, and other things like predictive maintenance, so that we can actually drive up the ability to have aircraft available and overall reduce the sustain. We're going to focus a lot on sustainment costs and what we can do to improve our sustainment cost performance. The second area I identify would be artificial intelligence tools for intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, analysis. Right now we have a lot of intelligence analysis, a lot of people watching full motion video. That's not a good use of money or time, and in that case, time is money.
If I may just say, on that point just quickly, there's a lot of technology out there and software that is getting frighteningly better at being able to look through a massive amount of data and find what you're looking for so that people don't have to, sit there and look at video after video. I mean, we have so much information, there's no way you could possibly see it all. What we need is the AI to get in there and find what we're looking for in that massive database. So that's technology I'd really encourage our committee to pursue. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. In fact, we are working several projects along that realm. The third that I'd highlight has to do with the way in which we're doing acquisition, and we just released a report on acquisition that includes a number of initiatives to systematically reduce the cost of what we're acquiring, including things like better estimates of what something should cost, so that we drive down the cost of things in negotiation with contractors. We have over 450 very large acquisition programs, and when we do those things systematically and we invest in our workforce, we're doing the contracting, we can over time drive down cost, and some of that's included here. I would also say finally that the speed of acquisition, in the case of acquisition and manufacturing, time is money, and so increasing the speed also helps to drive down the cost.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wilson's recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your success with Speaker Paul Ryan for appropriations to fund the military. Thank you for your leadership. I want to thank each of you for being here today. your service as a grateful veteran myself who has sons and a nephew serving today in the Army, Navy, and Air Force. We join service. Your leadership is reassuring to military families. Over the years, Secretary Esper, I've had the opportunity and been inspired to visit our Bulgarian and American troops at Novo Selo. Last year, it was incredible to meet with our NATO troops in Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, and the Republic of Georgia. I want to commend you that I think it's highly appropriate. The state partnership program is the state of Georgia with the Republic of Georgia. It's a wonderful experience to see so many Georgians together. What is the long-term vision for America's presence in Europe? What is the right balance between rotational and permanent troop presence in Europe?
Well, thank you, first of all, for that comment on the state partnership program, Mr. Wilson. I agree it's a very important program. When I was in Europe recently, I had just witnessed the Illinois Guard coming out of Poland. They've had a relationship together since 1993, and then I had the privilege of traveling to Ukraine, where I saw the New York National Guard training our Ukrainian partners there. And as a former guardsman myself, I really appreciate the work that our Guard units are doing around the country. With regard to your question, that is an issue that the Army is looking closely at on a constant basis. When I was in Europe, I had a chance to talk with the EUCOM commander, General Scaparrotti, about this. Right now, there's great benefit to rotating an Armored Brigade combat team to Europe. It provides us the ability to send a highly trained, fresh out of National Training Center, ready force that is then also trained to deploy onto the European continent. That is something critical as we find a large number of our forces here in the United States, the need to train to deploy. At the same time, we are also, as part of this FY19 budget, building pre-positioned stocks, an additional set in Europe to fall in. And I think over time, depending on how we are able to build additional facilities, particularly the poles, to maintain readiness, whether it's gunnery or maneuver, it starts changing the equation as to how much we would rotate and how much we would permanently station on the continent.
Well, I greatly appreciate, because to me, it's peace through strength, and to block Russian aggression in Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine. And for each of you, in line with Ranking Member Smith, how are you planning to address the emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, high-performance computing, directed energy, hypersonics, and autonomy? How are you resourcing these technologies within your budget request? And each of you, we'll begin with Secretary Spencer.
Congressman Wilson, thank you. If you look at the National Defense Strategy and you look at the key implementation levers when it comes to technology, the majority of them are the ones that you just mentioned. We are realigning dollars spent in our $18 billion research, development, testing budget to align with the National Defense Strategy in order to not only capture more dollars into those buckets, but to enhance the studies and the research that we've been doing so we can not only apply it, but get it out into the warfighter's hand as soon as possible.
Sir, with respect to hypersonics, the Air Force budget includes $258 million for fiscal year 19 for hypersonics. For directed energy, it's $280 million. What I would also say is that the three of us as secretaries have been getting together frequently to have breakfast. The Navy has the better coffee. But one of the things that we're doing is identifying high priority areas of research, and what all three of us are doing in those research areas, our services are doing in those research areas to see where there are gaps, where there are overlaps, and where we can build off of each other's research, including testing Navy systems on Air Force systems, and I think will start to bear fruit.
Well, it is true the Navy has better coffee. But we are also aligning our S&T for FY19 and 18. We have realigned 80% of our S&T funding along our 6 modernization priorities to make sure we get better bang for the buck, better ROI for those. Within that does include things such as AI, hypersonics, as Secretary Wilson mentioned, where we're trying to collaborate on that, and other areas such as directed energy, where we think collaborating together, putting additional funding into this can really help us get to the next level with regard to these types of technologies.
Well, thank each of you, and as the technologies change, I'm just grateful that you're in your leadership positions. Thank you.
Ms. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's good to see all of you here. Thank you very much for your service, for all of your efforts right now as we go into this difficult period waiting for budgets and appropriations. And I want to applaud you on many of the points you've already made, but I wanted to talk to you about one that I think is dear, at least to, I know, Secretary Wilson's heart, as well as a number of us here. Each of your memos discussed recruitment and retention, but none of you mentioned that to date, each of the military services experienced challenges retaining women to a varying degree, with a particularly wide gender gap in operational specialties. More women than men, as we know, leave the military at various career points. So concerns persist that this attrition will result in a disproportionate impact to mission readiness if left unresolved. What initiatives is each of your respective services implementing to address this gender gap? How are you evaluating that? And to what extent is there really a lot of good sharing that's going on between the services? Secretary Esper, you want to start?
Yes, ma'am. Let me address it a few different ways. First of all, I think we see a higher percentage of women being selected to enter the academy as from a commissioning source. Along those same lines, as you know, in the past couple of years, we've opened up the combat arms branches to women. They are doing very well. I've had the chance to visit with them, the units they're in both the National Training Center and at Fort Bragg. And at this point, under the Leaders First policy, we have dozens of women in, and in the battalions, these battalion-size units, over 600 women in. So a lot of expansion happening there. We're expanding the number of posts they can travel to as well, to make sure that we have greater opportunity throughout the ranks. I think there's a larger point here, too, and it's a more of a strategic one that I've discussed with some members here. And it's one of my major lines of effort in terms of the future Army, and that is how do we reform our current personnel system to focus it more on talent, an individual's knowledge, skills, and attributes with their preferences, so that you could allow, for example, if a woman wanted to time out her career and start a family, and then could come back in and restart the clock without any type of promotion penalty or those types of things. So I think we need to relook, and I know we are internally. I've stood up a task force to look at what a future personnel system would look like to accommodate things such as you described, to accommodate greater gender integration and opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary?
Congresswoman, as it applies to the Navy, I would, again, it's almost getting repetitive, but echo what Secretary Esper just said as far as what we have for options and the ability to entice women to come in and join the Navy. All service sectors are open in both the Navy and Marine Corps, as you know. All specialties are open. But when it comes to retention, if you look at our efforts in Sailor 2025, what we're doing specifically in the Navy, the ability to have an off-ramp mid-career to go do whatever you'd like to do, whether that's to go off and get a degree or go off, start a family, go off and do whatever you'd like to do and come in without penalty. That has been an active program that we've had, quite successful, and we're quite pleased with the results that it has. Going forward, rest assured the Navy is really looking at this. It's game on, because all three of us fish from the same pool, and that pool is getting smaller and smaller, both by qualification and by demographic size. We are going to be competing with the private sector. As the economy increases, we're going to see more competition there. We're going to use every single tool available to us, and I do believe we probably will be in front of you in the future, whether it's addressing DOPMA or something along that lines, to allow us more flexibility in order to incorporate those good people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Ma'am, we have a higher percentage of women in the service than any of the other services, and every position in the Air Force is open to women. We are also looking at different ways to be more flexible about how women and men can come in and out of the service, depending on their life circumstances. I would also echo my colleague's comment. I think this year we are expecting a higher percentage of women entrants into the this service academy class than any in history. And I would also say that we're, I think, trying to change a little bit the way we talk and think about who the protectors are in this country. Because I think sometimes the way in which we talk about the services may appeal more to boys than to girls. And that's important in the way we talk about these things. And if I asked everyone in this room to think, just close your eyes for a second and think about the most protective person you know in your life, someone who would do anything to keep you safe. And half the people in this room are thinking about their moms. We are the protectors. That's what the military does. We serve to protect the rest of you. And that's a very natural place for a woman to be.
Thank you.
Comment gentlelady's expired. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all the witnesses for being here and for your service to our country. Secretary Wilson, first of all, I wholeheartedly agree with that last statement you just made, and I applaud your effort in that endeavor. One of the primary things I try to do on this committee is keep Ranking Member Smith happy, and since he's charged me with asking you about Space Corps, I guess I will.
So that's because he didn't want me to talk about the KC-46.
Yeah. President Trump last week endorsed the idea of a separate Space Force. Do you agree with the President's assertion that we should form a separate Space Force?
Last week, the President of the United States said that the new National Defense Strategy for space recognizes that space is a warfighting domain. I don't remember any president ever openly saying that. He has relaunched the National Space Council under the leadership of Vice President Pence, and nowhere is his leadership more clear than in the President's budget. And this year's budget accelerates our ability to deter and defend and protect our ability to operate and to win in space. The President wants to consider different ways of organizing, and we look forward to supporting him in that effort.
Great. And I would also point out his words were, we should have a Space Force, we will have a Space Force. I like the way that sounded. Last week, we had General Jay Raymond testify before my subcommittee, and he talked about space being a priority and an elevation of its priority status within the Air Force. But then he also talked about a $351 million worth of requirements that are unfunded requirements. If, in fact, space has this enhanced priority status within the Air Force, why are those $351 million worth of requirements unfunded?
Sir, first of all, I appreciate the increased top line that came from this committee and from the Congress as a whole. We are required by law to put forward an unfunded priorities list, and what we've done in our unfunded priorities list is to accelerate things that are already in our 5-year plan, so that when you ask us if there is higher top line, if there's more money available, what would we do with it? And the answer is we would accelerate what's already in our 5-year plan, and that was in 3 areas. The first was space, the second was nuclear modernization, and the third was military construction.
Well, in your opening statement, you made reference to the fact that there was an 18% increase over the FIDEP. But yet there was only a 6% increase proposed for the 19 budget. I would really like to see those numbers reversed, at least for the 19 budget. I think more than 6% would be a better illustration of priority status. Secretary Esper, my understanding is that the Army's modernization budget went up 14% from 18 to 19, and that's great news. And you've using that money to fund a variety of very important programs, but you forgot one. The Stryker program. Can you tell me why that is the case?
Mr. Rogers, we are actually putting money into the Stryker program based on a urgent operational needs request from the commander in Europe. What we are doing is improving their lethality and survivability. On the lethality front, we're looking at arming them with 30-millimeter cannons and with anti-tank missiles. I will tell you that when I was in Germany a month and a half ago now, I had a chance to spend some time on the vehicle and talk to the crew and was very impressed by what I saw. They will be taking those vehicles through their trials over the coming months, and we will assess the effectiveness. I think in principle, I think it's very good where we're going with regard to both upgunning them and making them more survivable in the sense of adding double V hulls, for example.
What are your long-term plans for the Stryker, or do you know right now?
Well, right now, we plan to keep them in the inventory. I think our focus really is on the next generation combat vehicle. That is one of our cross-functional teams, and that is viewed more as a replacement, the next generation for the Bradley fighting vehicle, if you will.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Larson.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for coming. So we've been hearing testimony in the committee and a couple of subcommittees, specifically with regards to the investment in emerging technologies from other countries, China and Russia in particular, and how that could change a military balance of power. So the current S&T budget for the department as a percentage is, I think, lower than it was when I was first here in the early 2000s. Right now it's about 2.3% of the total budget. So the question I have is if this is a concern and a high priority, the S&T budget does not seem to be reflecting that. So for each of you, briefly, can you tell us what your plans are for investing in your own S&T budget over the next 5 years as opposed to just today?
Yes, sir. Let me first say, from 17 to 19, we're seeing nearly a 20% increase in terms of RDT&E funding, so about $8.5 billion to 10.2 or so. Alongside that, what we plan on doing is looking at the 80% of the S&T budget and making sure that is fully aligned with our priorities. What we found last fall going into this, that they were not aligned to any particular priority. So I think what we expect to get a lot more bang for the buck, return on investment, if you will, from greater alignment and greater focus. Knowing, of course, that S&T, the RDT&E budget is the seed corn for future readiness, we plan to continue investing in that because we know it's critical to achieve what we need to achieve in order to be able to meet the threats, the challenges that are outlined for us in the National Defense Strategy.
Spencer?
I'm actually not tremendously concerned as far as the overall S&T numbers because when you look at 17 compared to 19, we're up $1 billion in Navy research and development. From where I came from, the first thing I noticed is that we're going to have to really harness the discipline of portfolio management. The great thing about having a strategy is you do have alignment. In the NDS implementation, we have our 6 lanes of effort. We will focus our dollars on those 6 lanes of effort, not to the disregard of other projects that we might have going on, but it's going to be a more focused, tailored application of funds.
Sir, we had a slight increase from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19 in our S&T budget from 2.5 to 2.6 billion. I would say that my concern is that most of that is on the test and evaluation side and not on the path-breaking research side. The Air Force has launched a 12-month review of our science and technology strategy to look at both where we invest and then how we partner with universities and industry to get more out of our research dollar, and particularly how to spin on technology developments that may have been developed outside of national security to get them into our weapon systems.
Yeah, and that's probably where you ought to be headed. I appreciate the answers here. They're not settling for me, but I appreciate the answers. Secretary Spencer, I'll just ask you specifically on this because of time, but it has to do with EW and EW XCOM, Executive Committee. I have the Growlers are all stationed at NAS Whidbey Island, and of course they're just airplanes until you put a lot of good stuff on them, and that's all electronic warfare. But we've had problems in the past getting the Pentagon to focus on EW more broadly. Each services, Air Force dropped out of that business for a while, coming back in. Army didn't have an organic capability until that was stood up in about 2006, 7, 8 or so because of Iraq. Maybe not on behalf of all the services, but maybe just focusing on your service. Can you talk a little bit, help me understand what you're doing to support EW XCOM, not just in terms of ideas, but to get that acquisition process to move faster when we make that investment into electronic warfare so that we have things like next-gen jammers, which are finally coming online after a lot of time. How can we shorten that time frame?
Congressman, that's it's a focus of what we're doing right now. As I said before, another committee, one of the secret weapons that took us 3 months to convince to come join us was Mr. Hondo Gertz out of SOCOM. and his abilities and his proven track record in expediting the acquisition process within government confines. That's going up and down the ladder on all platforms. EW is a key component for not only Navy Marine Corps team, but for our other fellow services on battle force management. So it is a key area that we are working on. It develops across the board. We're in conversations at all times. Again, back to your question, as it pertains specifically to the Navy, it is our focus. We will get the next-gen jammer out there ASAP.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Wilson, Secretary Wilson, I've never heard the case for who should be serving in our uniforms better put than the way you said that. I don't know if you noticed, but you got real quiet in here where you were finishing up your statement, and I think it's because your words were reverberating through the minds of everybody in here. So thank you for that statement, and I'm blessed to have been reared and raised by a mom who fit that category, so thank you for that. Secretary Spencer, we had 4 ships wrecks in 17. As a result, Vice Chief of the Naval Operations and the Secretary ordered a review of what was going on and why. One of the recommendations was that we take that decision as to putting a boat in harm's way further up the food chain and not allocating resources to a combatant commander that weren't ready to go there. Can you talk to us about where that recommendation is and what's been the reaction among the various folks who are looking at that?
Yes, Congressman, just to add a little meat on that, not only did we do a comprehensive review at the Secretary's, at the CNO's level, but we also put the strategic review in place at my level to go after the root causes. And one of the things that is, one of the items, the recommendations that came out of the strategic readiness review was our C2, our command and control. And you will soon be hearing a result of the last, I believe it was 2.5 months of deliberation we have in the Navy to provide a clear point of view from the commander on his ship looking up as to what resources he can ask for, who's responsible for providing them, and his chain of command to make it crystal clear that responsibilities are in place. As far as the combatant commanders go and tasking the demand signal, that is in place. I can tell you that robust conversations go on at all times. I think it's been heightened to a higher level. But interestingly enough, it is not so much the generator or the demand signal that's the issue. It really comes back to resource funding when it comes to surface ships and the Navy, and even subsurface ships and aviation for that matter. With continual funding, we can get these capital assets through maintenance back out into the fleet on a regular drumbeat, and that will be the biggest solution to providing readiness and troop wear going forward.
All right, thank you. Mr. Esper, Secretary Esper, the fight in Afghanistan, you're moving something called the Security Force Assistance Brigades, which seems to be a more tailored approach to assistance using maybe more experienced personnel as an idea, as a way to try to make sure the brigade combat teams are ready to go, but then looks like we're asking for those to come in on top of those security force brigades. Can you talk to us about the operational tempo of that security force brigade, why that's even more or less than what it would be now, and the impact it has on your ability to keep folks ready to go?
Yes, sir. As you noted, we're standing up 6 security force assistance brigades, 5 an active component, 1 in the Guard. 1 has been stood up and is now in Afghanistan. It began in Fort Benning. The second one is being stood up now at Fort Bragg. And as you rightly noted, the purpose is to provide specially trained, ready, and equipped forces that can relieve infantry brigade combat teams of the challenges of maintaining readiness while they're deployed. So an infantry brigade combat team is 3,000 plus people. An SFAB is 816 or so. And what that does is you can allow better trained, equipped forces to train allied or partners at a much lower cost without degrading the readiness of a brigade combat team. So as we said, the 1st Brigade Combat Team, first SFAB is on the ground now in Afghanistan, beginning operations, and we're anxious to see how well they do. And as you noted, there is an IBCT there currently. I think over time, the purpose is to replace and not have a dual capability on the ground.
So what would be the operational tempo for that security force brigade? How often will they go into the fight, coming and going?
I think it's would be on the same type of rotational basis. I don't know that we've determined whether it's a 6 or 9 month rotation. That's something I know the chief and the staff are considering. But again, the aim would be to replace an IBCT, and IBCTs are typically on a 9-month rotation.
So would they go back to the same spot, kind of like your Special Forces guys do, to make sure they've got familiarity with the area?
Yes, sir, depending on the need from the combatant commanders.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're back.
Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Spencer, in the last couple of weeks, our committee has heard from 2 combatant commanders, Admiral Harris, who testified that he's basically been able to get, for the 2nd year in a row, only about half the attack submarines that he needs in terms of requirements that he has. General Scaparrotti testified last week about the fact that they're seeing Russian submarine activity they haven't seen since the 1980s. In your testimony, you talked about the fact that the shipbuilding plan is designed to sort of be able to take advantage of industrial capacity to sort of move more aggressively, which is great. I guess the question I want to ask is the Block 5 process is underway right now for the next 5-year purchase of Virginia-class attack submarines. We had a great model in 2014 where the Navy built into the contract an option to go higher than the 9 subs that was initially requested by the Navy at that point, and they were able to get, as Admiral Johnson proudly proclaimed, 10 subs for the price of 9, by using that option as a way to incentivize the 2 shipyards to come in with a better price, which is all about acquisition reform, obviously, that we're talking about here today. I have to say, we're getting sort of mixed signals right now in terms of, on the one hand, your visual chart that came over with the shipbuilding plan showed capacity in 22 and 23. Obviously, the NDA last year, my friend Mr. Whitman and I, we sent a strong signal that we'd like to see that block go higher than 10 subs. Yet, what we were getting in terms of, the narrative testimony from the Navy is that they are really just proceeding on a 2-a-year build rate for Block 5. So I guess the question I want to ask is, using, again, a successful model, I mean, what's your position in terms of using an optional structure to the Block 5 contract to at least give us the ability to go higher, given, again, what we're hearing from the combatant commanders?
Thank you, Congressman. The whole purpose for the 30-year shipbuilding plan to be delivered alongside the budget was to open up an intellectual discussion about what is available out in the industry as far as capacity goes. And that was the whole reason we included the graphic. As you all well know, the 3 of us sitting here are portfolio managers when it comes to allocation of resources for specific platforms. Would I love to say I can take as much money as you will give me and I will provide you as much as I can up to industrial capacity? Yes, but then that would disbalance the portfolio. That being said, when it comes to the Virginia class, which, by the way, for any of those of you who are interested, it is probably one of our best performing undersea contracts, if not boat contracts that we've had over its period of time as far as performance for dollar. Yes, we have that option available to us. Yes, we have the option available to us, and we've been talking to industry. Could we take that up to 3 boats a cycle? Yes. It's there if, in fact, the resources are there. It is the managing of the resources. If, in fact, through reformation, I can find another $2 billion within the Navy, and I can reapply those funds internally to that program or any other of the programs, totally available.
So, and that's good to hear. Again, I just want to emphasize that when the Block 4 was done, the resources actually weren't sort of appropriated yet. I mean, but it created a structure where they were able to expand it as time went on. Again, with the strong support of Congress. And I just want to leave that point with you, that I think that hopefully will be the way to incentivize the shipyards, as well as to give us that option to go bigger. Because, and I know you know this, I mean, this is a real critical part of the fleet in terms of what's happening out there in the world today. And just to follow up on that, again, you were so helpful during the conference committee in terms of getting that continuous production authority, which again was another way to give the Navy some efficiencies on Columbia class. Again, the October report that came over really didn't talk about using those authorities in 2019, and that's about $380 million, I think, was the estimate of savings that we could get from that. So, again, you were right there with us in terms of getting that language through, and I hope, again, we're going to take advantage of those authorities.
You will see us take advantage of those, Congressman. I think just if I could put a punctuation on the comment, in light of the discussions that we've had with our suppliers starting last fall, having candid discussions on what we need as far as requirements and expedition, and also asking what they need to go forward. The discussions now have risen to the level of, if I need 20% savings and I need a year and a half taken off, what do you need from me to get there? And it's reframing the conversation so we are having a true insight as to the availability of production capacity within the system. We will exercise all that we can do to make sure that that's the most efficient application of dollars.
Mr. Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Esper, Secretary Spencer, Secretary Wilson, thanks much for joining us, and thanks for your service. Secretary Spencer, just yesterday, the Navy announced a request for proposals for a two-ship buy for CVN 80 and 81. We know that that is a welcomed response by the Navy to the FY18 National Defense Authorization Act, which talks about accelerating the pace to get to 355 ships. 12 of those will be aircraft carriers, so we deeply appreciate that. I think, too, it does several things. It sends a strong signal to the rest of the world that we're committed to having those 12 aircraft carriers. It's a commitment to the brave men and women in the Navy. It's also a commitment to the folks that build those ships. I think those are all extraordinarily important aspects of what we, as a team, Congress, the administration, need to do to make sure we have what's necessary going into the future. We know, too, that it's been expressed, as you said, in the negotiations and conversations with the contractors, that we can save at least $2.5 billion by buying these two ships at a time and, again, keep us on track to the 12 aircraft carriers that we need. I wanted to get your perspective on this aggressive and innovative strategy you talked about how you all are working to save money, but more specifically, what do you need from Congress as you continue down the road? Because obviously you'll get these proposals in. What do you need from Congress to not only save the $2.5 billion, but hopefully save more in looking at buying two of these ships and things that we can do to enable the Navy to implement even more aggressively this strategy?
Congressman, I appreciate tremendously your support and your subcommittee's support and the support in this room when it comes to the capital assets the Navy's looking at. When it comes to actual additional authorities, they're going to be de minimis, believe it or not. We have what we need to go forward. When it comes to funding of the two-ship, we will come before you asking on the financial side for a path forward in that way. But we really do believe that what you have given us when it comes to specifically surface ships, we have the authorities we need to go forward. Again, I go back to the understanding that we have presently in place, which was if we can find dollars in our reformation process, we can reallocate those dollars coming to you, obviously, for approval to put towards different platforms. That will be a battle cry within the Navy.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Secretary Wilson, I do want to talk a little bit about KC-46A, not to leave that off the table, but to put it in perspective, here's a platform that's been flying since 1981, and it's already been delivered in a tanker configuration to two of our allies just last week. We saw, too, Boeing reported the KC-46A program had two Category 1 deficiency reports, one in the remote vision system and the other in the centerline drogue system. Are these deficiencies behind the Air Force's report last week that they're going to revise the timeline for first delivery? And if not, tell me the impact of these deficiencies. And it's not just these system deficiencies, but it's also getting the FAA certifications, which I believe are still on schedule. But if you'll give us an overview about where things are, because Boeing is still saying they're going to deliver on time, the Air Force changing the timelines. Can you give us a perspective on where things are?
Yes, sir. Boeing is saying that they're going to deliver in the second quarter of 18. The Air Force thinks it's more likely to be late 18. And Boeing has been overly optimistic in all of their scheduled reports. There are a couple of things that impact this. One is they have had flight test delays. So the flight test the FAA flight testing has not gone as fast as Boeing anticipated it would, and the Air Force was skeptical about its schedule when it was put forward. As you mentioned, there are two critical deficiencies, one being the remote vision system, and the second being a drogue disconnect that they're working on fixing. The Undersecretary of the Air Force went to Seattle last week for a deep dive with Boeing, and we have asked them to put their A-team on this to get the problems fixed and get the aircraft to the Air Force.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Ms. Bardeo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to Secretaries Esper, Spencer, and Wilson. Secretary Spencer, my question is for you. 2017 was challenging for the Navy, particularly with regard to the maintenance of the fleet. Numerous articles and GAO reports discussed the maintenance backlog for surface and submarine vessels. I continue to be perplexed at the Navy's mixed messaging on the state readiness in regards to depot-level ship repair. The 2017 Strategic Readiness Review highlighted that the constrained ship repair capacity is inadequate to meet the demand. Yet, when we asked if the ship repair capability was insufficient to meet requirements in the Pacific, the response was that the Navy did not agree with this. With 60% of our naval fleet operating in the Pacific region, what is the Navy's plan for depot-level ship repair in this area, and is it a priority?
Congresswoman, we have had discussions on this, and I appreciate your question. Obviously, depot-level maintenance is key to the Navy. You've heard me earlier as I was answering questions that we need to get the proper resourcing facing off our ability to access availabilities in a timely manner to get the what I call the battle rhythm of maintenance and ships out into fleet back to normal. We believe that in the North American market, with going back to appropriately funding availabilities and having the discipline to access those availabilities, we do have the capacity to get the fleet back on its feet and out the door.
So, Mr. Secretary, then would you say it's adequate or inadequate?
Between public and private, I believe it's adequate.
Thank you. Another question I have for you, the FY18 NDAA also required the Navy to report to this committee on depot-level ship repair in the Western Pacific. Earlier this year, I asked that you provide periodic updates on the progress. So what is the status of this report, and when do you expect for the report to be completed and transmitted to this committee?
I would hope that this report, Congresswoman, would be ready by the end of spring, giving you the update that you need about the assets available.
Good, good. All right. My second question, Secretary, in 2011, the DOD made the net negative commitment to reduce land holdings on Guam as part of the relocation of the U.S. Marines from Japan. Last year, the Navy submitted a report to this committee regarding the status of net negative, which included 8 additional parcels pending transfer to Gov Guam, totaling some 114 additional acres. This commitment for the military to hold less land on Guam is key to maintaining support within our civilian community. So will you commit to providing me and the committee with an update on the status of the Navy's efforts to return these 8 parcels?
I will.
All right. And additionally, I introduced the Guam Land Return Act yesterday that included 7 additional properties requested by Gov Guam agencies and Guam families for consideration as part of the net negative pledge. So will you commit to reviewing these parcels for me?
We will commit to review, Congressman.
Thank you. and I still have a little time. This question is for the panel as it relates to your area. After years of concern regarding readiness shortfalls and the impacts of sequestration, I'm concerned that the 2019 budget request may not appropriately balance long-term readiness recovery through modernization with near-term efforts through sustainment and maintenance. So with regard to the FY 2019 budget, how will the request support near-term readiness recovery, and are there specific areas in the operations and maintenance accounts, such as weapon systems and so forth? Could you help with this readiness recovery effort?
Ma'am, we're putting substantial sums of money into both O&M for near-term readiness and, of course, additional dollars for modernization account as well, double-digit spending, if you will. And so we're confident that this funding is sufficient for us to lay the groundwork to build the next generation of fighting vehicles, aircraft, et cetera. At the same time, what's the essential piece for us, we believe in the Army, is to reform the current acquisition process. So we're putting a lot of effort into that, most notably the Army Futures Command, which will be stood up this summer, which will help us maximize every one of those dollars.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And for the Air Force, I have no questions. I yield back.
Mr. Lamborn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here this morning. And my first question will be for Secretaries Spencer and Wilson, and then a couple of follow-ups. And I think I know the answer to this, but it's important to put it on the record. Under the previous administration, the #1 stated mission of the various branches, of the Department of Defense was the nuclear enterprise and its role in providing a strategic nuclear deterrent. Can you confirm that under this administration and under your stewardship, for the parts of the triad that are under your purview, that continues to be our #1 mission?
I can confirm to you, Congressman, that for the United States Navy and our understanding of the total NPR and national defense strategy, it is. And I can show you by data what I mean by that. The #1 acquisition program in the United States Navy is the Columbia platform, which is the undersea leg of the nuclear triad. And that is our primary focus for the primary platform.
Sir, one of our core missions is the nuclear deterrent, and I believe that a safe and secure and reliable nuclear deterrent has helped to keep the peace since the Second World War. In the Air Force budget, we are responsible for 2 of the 3 legs of the triad. Our budget includes the modernization of the long-range standoff weapon, which is the replacement for the air-launched cruise missile, the modernization of the B-52s, the continued development of the B-21 bomber, as well as the ground-based strategic deterrent, which is the replacement for the Minuteman III. The one part that's not often focused on in the nuclear deterrent, but is funded in our budget as well as the Navy's, is nuclear command, control, and communication. And that part is also modernized in this 5-year period, and it's an extremely important part of the nuclear deterrent.
Would you go as far as to say that these things you just described are your #1 mission, or at least that nothing is higher than those missions?
So I would say nothing is higher than those missions. The Air Force provides global reach, global power, global strike, global mobility. So we provide a lot of things to the joint force, but there's nothing higher than the nuclear deterrent.
Thank you. I appreciate those answers. And Secretary Wilson, I'm really glad to see that we're going to have more money in the upcoming budget for nuclear modernization and for catching up in space. Will there have to be trade-offs, though, with the rest of your budget to accomplish those things, or will that be able to be done with new money?
So with respect to the nuclear deterrent, as I mentioned, we are doing modernization of 2 legs of the triad and also nuclear command and control. With respect to space, we're not catching up. The United States of America is the best in the world at space, and our adversaries know it. In any future conflict, we expect that they will seek to deny us the use of space as part of in any crisis or conflict. So what we are doing in this budget is accelerating our ability to defend our assets on orbit. The Air Force operates 76 satellites. Of those, 30 are GPS. We're moving to jam-proof or jam-resistant GPS. We also operate command and satellite communications. About 25 of the 76 satellites are satellite communications. We're moving towards jam-resistant satellite communications. So across the board, and then we have things that we're doing to defend other assets on orbit. So we're moving to defendable space so that we can deter and defend our assets on orbit, which we didn't have to do when we initially built this architecture. It's a challenge, but we're meeting that challenge.
Okay, and I'm really glad to hear that. To accomplish that and the acceleration you talked about, and I'm totally in support and really happy to see that. But do you anticipate any trade-offs to get there or not?
So there are always trade-offs in any budget. We deeply appreciate the increase in the top line for defense, which has allowed us to meet many of our missions and try to do so cost effectively. Because our obligation is to take every dollar that you have appropriated for us and try to do the best we can to defend the country.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Ms. Songus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to our witnesses. It's good to have you here. Secretary Spencer and Secretary Wilson, I first wanted to address the ongoing physiological episodes occurring in the FA-18 community and increasingly in other aircraft throughout the Navy and the Air Force. There have been two recent incidents that underscore the urgency and persistent nature of this issue. In January, an EA-18 Growler aircraft experienced a failure in the environmental control system, causing temperatures in the cockpit to plunge to negative 30 degrees, resulting in a layer of ice covering the instrumentation and windows, rendering the pilots almost completely blind, according to the report. Both pilots survived, but suffered serious frostbite injuries. Most recently, two Navy FA-18 pilots died after ejecting from their aircraft near Naval Air Station Key West just last week. Now, while the cause of this latest incident has yet to be determined, I'm gravely concerned not only about our efforts to correct this ongoing problem, but also about the impact it may be having on the recruitment, retention, and confidence level of the pilots we asked to fly this aircraft. It is vitally important that we get to the root of this ongoing problem as soon as possible, and in particular, Secretary Spencer, I encourage the Navy to maintain the constancy of effort and expertise to help get at the bottom of this and help solve it. It's just a statement. It's something we've been monitoring in the Tactical Air and Land Subcommittee. I hear from families quite often about it. And in a recent meeting with the Chief of Naval Operations, there was a young pilot in the room who herself had had 3 physiological episodes while flying for the Navy. So something we have to stay on top of, and just wanted to make that statement. Switching topic, Secretary Esper, I commend you and Army leadership for establishing a Futures and Modernization Command within the next year. Too often, too many years and too many taxpayer dollars have been misused in developing capabilities that the military services ultimately determine are no longer relevant in the face of rapid technological change and a changing threat environment, oftentimes just as you're about to make a very important investment and move forward. This problem impacts all the services, but 2 recent examples are top of mind, the Army's Network Modernization Strategy and the Air Force's follow-on JSTARS program. The services may well learn from programs that are canceled or head in a new direction, but the amount of time, the amount of money, and in particular the amount of talent we waste in learning those hard lessons is of great concern, particularly when the reasons behind these course corrections were foreseeable had our nation's greatest innovators had a seat at the table. So with that said, Secretary Esper, how do you aim to get at this problem through the proposed Futures and Modernization Command? How will the command work through anticipating what capabilities we will need in the future? The threats are not always as unknown as sometimes suggested, and equally important, what capabilities our adversaries will have in a way that is better than our process. As you said today, the focus is to save money, but to make sure we're more effective, more lethal. You have a more effective, more lethal Army. How do you see the Futures Command and Modernization Command achieving that goal?
Congresswoman, the Army Futures Command will likely do 2 things. One, will have the talent inherent from both military and civilian to look deep into the future about what the strategic threats and the operational environment may look like. That, in turn, will help inform the material solutions that we may need in that future state.
And how will that change compared to what you do now? What will be different about that?
Well, what we find now is that capability, the need to look into the future often gets lost because of the demands of the present. And by putting that responsibility in a separate command and just focused on the future, the sense is that we'll have greater focus on the future and not get lost by the present. There will be another organization responsible for maintaining focus on the near fight. The other part of what Futures Command will do, of course, is to consolidate the entire acquisition process, achieving unity of effort and unity of command, which is essential to holding people accountable and to making the system as efficient and as effective as possible. And in that way, we can line up everything under a single commander, whether it's from the concept to the requirements process, to the material development plan, all the way through engineering, manufacturing development, sustainment, testing, et cetera. We'll bring all those people together up front. And more specifically to the point you raised, and we're doing this now in the cross-functional teams, is we bring everybody to the table early, to include the private sector and academia where need be, to get those best ideas that are happening out there.
I think it requires a deep dive, and to do that, you've got to have people whose job in life has been focused on looking ahead, and not just solving a near-term problem, as has been too often the case. Thank you.
Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Spencer, this is more of a request. I know that there's a proposal to draw down either the Mercy or the Comfort. One ship operates on the East Coast, one on the West. If those current ships are not the right platform for the mission, I can certainly understand that. They're very old. But I just want to reiterate my support for that mission and tell you that when I was in Djibouti, the Chinese had a hospital ship over there, certainly providing health care to countries, I believe, is a vital part of our soft power, and would look forward to a meeting with the Navy about how they intend to carry out that mission if the Mercy and the Comfort are not the right platforms for that.
Rest assured, Congressman, that's front of mind. 2021 is when we have our first decision point, but obviously we're going to address it prior to that.
Yes,
we'll
sir.
keep you informed.
Thank you. Secretary Esper, Fort Stewart, we have plenty of room for another security forces brigade or a full brigade. I hope that you'll consider Fort Stewart for any additional platforms or teams, I should say. Obviously very close to the Savannah port, easy to get in and out of there, and we would love to have the additional men and women in Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Madam Secretary, Secretary Wilson, you talked a little bit about sustainment, the 3D manufacturing, the additive manufacturing, predictive analysis, and how we can use that for sustainment operations and speeding up acquisitions. Would you expand on that a little bit and include in that how we're going to handle the intellectual property contracting and the data? It seems to me that no private sector company would pay somebody to develop a computer program for them and then find out at the end of the contract that they didn't actually own the program, and how the Air Force is addressing those issues.
So with respect to intellectual property, this is one where we may need to work with the Congress. We are pushing the limits of our negotiations on intellectual property on new contracts up front. What we do find is that when we're trying to maintain older equipment, when we go out with a request for parts, that many of the manufacturers are no longer in business, and then we realize we don't have the intellectual property for the door handle on the back door of a KC-135, and so we then in some cases, the A-10 is one example, the prime contractor is not even in business anymore. So we are actually trying for our contracts going forward to get more of the data rights over time. There are a lot of different ways to negotiate that, but if we can do that, we think we can reduce the cost of sustainment over time by keeping competition in place and by being able to get other people to build parts when companies go out of business, which they do over the 20 or 30-year period for for a piece of equipment. With respect to additive manufacturing and advanced manufacturing in general, we think it has tremendous promise for maintaining maintaining weapon systems and for the long logistics pipeline. So instead of having 30,000 parts, you have material and you can make the parts as you need them. We think there's tremendous opportunity there.
Yes, ma'am. I represent Robins Air Force Base, and with the CNC machining and 3D printing now that can be done, as long as you've got the schematic and the raw materials, you can manufacture the part right there as you need it. So I certainly appreciate all of your service. Look forward to continuing to work with you. And with that, I yield the remainder of my time.
Mr. Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman. Last year, we had General McDough, Transcom Commander, talk about some of the challenges he faces each and every day. And one of the items he talked about that keeps him up at night are the refuelers. We heard some questions earlier today. We go back in time, late 1950s, our KC-135s came online. Then in the early 80s, the KC-10s. You know, we've been looking at a replacement plane for those refuelers for about a decade. Secretary Wilson, we're here talking about acquisition reform. Given that the dates for these KC-46s have slipped from August of 17 to January 18, we're not sure what exactly the time frame is now. What would you do differently in the acquisition process to avoid some of the issues that we're looking at right now?
Sort of one of the first things to point out is that it's a fixed price contract with Boeing, so they are not getting any more money from us.
But the time frame.
But the time time is an issue, and schedule is an issue. When they had the last slip of schedule, we got consideration from them, so they basically compensated the government for their lateness on the schedule. I expect that will be an issue in the coming months with Boeing as well for these most recent slips. We will also probably have to keep the KC-10s on longer unless they're able to catch up with procurement with producing aircraft once they get the line clear and get these problems worked out. And I expect that we will be working with them on that as well.
But in terms of moving forward, what would you have done differently if we faced the challenge of picking a new contractor today? Would you have structured it different? Would you put certain deadlines? I mean, this is a serious issue, as you well know, as anybody who flies a plane knows. Mm-hmm. How could we avoid it next time?
So I do think that there's a place here for fixed price contracting, and I think that that in this case, having done a fixed price contract with Boeing was the right thing to do. And they're not, and we have other contracts where, quite frankly, I think we have more risk and we don't have a fixed price. I do think that in this case, one of our frustrations with Boeing is that they're much more focused on their commercial activity than they are on getting this right for the Air Force and getting these airplanes to the Air Force. And that's the message we took to them in Seattle last week.
So as you pointed out, there is a fixed price, and from the dollars and cents, that's great. But extending out the two craft that we talked about, 3 additional years at minimum? We wouldn't change a thing in...
No, I share your frustration, sir. I wasn't here at the time, and I guess I haven't thought in detail. I'm not the kind of person who thinks about what I would have done in the past had I been here. I don't really think that way too much. My focus right now is to get the aircraft from Boeing and get them up there flying so that we can modernize the fleet. We currently have 457 tankers. That'll grow to 479, and as the KC-46 comes online, we will retire the KC-10s.
Thank you. I'll yield back.
Mr. Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Spencer, good to see you. Listen very carefully to your opening remarks and appreciate 2 words that I heard loud and clear. One was people, and the other was urgency. In your written testimony, you say that the 30-year shipbuilding plan sets, quote, the conditions for an enduring industrial base, close quote. Industrial base is people, the people that work at the now just 7 shipyards that build the Navy ships. Unfortunately, your acquisition plan for small surface combatants fails to provide for an enduring industrial base. In fact, it will erode the industrial base for those ships. The Navy requested only one littoral combat ship for fiscal year 19 before the transition next year to the frigate. Now, the threshold problem is the Navy was supposed to have gotten the frigate done for fiscal year 19, and that predates you. But you used the word urgency. The Navy has not had urgency about this. So we're in the conundrum we're in right now because of a lack of urgency. And I have to tell you, Mr. Secretary, since you've come on board, I haven't seen the Navy pick up the urgency on this program. In fact, I see the opposite. I think you're slowing down. In fact, some people from the Navy have been in the shipyard in my hometown and said they want to know what happens if it slides further from fiscal year 20. So I think the urgency is missing there. Both of these shipyards that are making LCSs now are telling us that if we go to one littoral combat ship, that they'll have a dramatic erosion of the industrial base. They will lay off thousands of shipyard workers, and we'll look at the prospect of losing one or both of those two shipyards, shrinking the number of shipyards from 7 to 5. That's the industrial base. Now, Admiral Nagley, who is the LCS Program Executive Officer, I know you've renamed that program, but he was at the time when he said this, he's testified that the optimal sustaining rate for both shipyards is a total of 3 ships per year, and that's where we've been authorizing and appropriating the last several years. At the beginning of this month, Assistant Secretary Gertz said before this committee that, quote, certainly one LCS a year is not near the optimal rate, close quote, and he said further that this will probably cause some work turned down in those yards as we build back into the frigate, close quote. And you yourself said to the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee just a little while ago that the purchase of a single LCS was, quote, not optimal, close quote. Okay. You may say that you're concerned with the enduring industrial base, but it seems to me you've overlooked the industrial base problem we're facing this year. So please tell me, sir, why we in Congress should accept a, quote, not optimal, close quote, request for the littoral combat ship program.